Good morning, everyone. I am Alvin Moreno, and I am tackled about ancient Greece and ancient Rome. Ancient Greece, Greek civilization from c. 1200 BC to c. 600 AD. Ancient Greece was a northeastern Mediterranean civilization existing from the Greek Dark Ages of the 12th to 9th centuries. BC to the end of classical antiquity, the comprised a loose collection of culturally and linguistically related city-states, and these regions were officially unified only once per 13 years, under Alexander the Great's empire from 336 to 323 BC. In Western history, the era of classical antiquity was immediately followed by the early Middle Ages and Byzantine period. Geometric arts. Geometric arts is a piece of Greek art characterized largely by geometric motifs and vase painting that flourished towards the end of Greek Dark Ages, c. 900 to 700 BC. Its center was in Athens, and from there the style spread among the trading cities of the age. Next was the archaic art from 700 to 480 BC. Began with an orientalizing phase 735 to 650 BC. In these elements from other civilizations began to creep into Greek art. The elements were those of the Near East, not exactly what we think as the Orient now, but remember, the world was a lot smaller in those days. The archaic base is best known for the beginnings of realistic depictions of human and monumental stone sculptures. It was during the archaic period that the limestone chorus, or male, chori, or female statues were created, always depicting young, smiling persons. Note that the archaic, subsequent, classical, and Hellenistic periods each contain separate early, high, and late pieces, just like the Italian Renaissance. Would further on down the road. So, here we are in classical art. The peak of Greek sculpture and architecture was the classical period. Period of cultural history of the ancient Greek and the Roma centered in the Mediterranean between the 8th century BCE and the 6th century CE. So we are here in classical architecture, architectural style, inspired by classical Greco-Roman architectural principles. Classical architecture usually denotes architecture which is more or less consciously derived from principles of Greek and Roman architecture, of classical antiquity, or sometimes more especially from the works of the Roman architect Vitruvius. Different styles of classical architecture have arguably existed since the Carolingian Renaissance and prominently since the Italian Renaissance. So we have Temple of Hephaestus or Hephaestion in 449 to 415 BCE. The Temple of the Hephaestus is an imposing ancient gray temple in the Athenian Agora. It has been described as the best preserved ancient Greek temple in Greece. The Temple of Hephaestus is also sometimes known as the Theosum, as it was once believed that the bones of the legendary Athenian king Theseus were buried here. The temple was constructed in the 5th century BC. During the century mark, 449 BC, situated in the Athenian Agora, the temple consists of strong Doric columns, hexastyle, 6 times 13 columns in shape. Hellenistic art in 323 to 31 BC, Greek-like mannerism went a wee bit over the top by the time Alexander has died. Things got chaotic in Greece. His empire broke apart. Greek sculptors had mastered carving marble. They were so technically perfect that they began to sculpt impossibly heroic humans. People simply do not look as closely symmetrical or beautiful in real life as those sculptures portray, which makes me why the sculptures remain popular after all these years. We are here in the Hellenistic period, 323. Portrait of Alexander the Great from Pergamon, first half of 2nd century BC. Ancient Rome. So what is ancient Rome? It was in modern historiography, ancient Rome refers to Roman civilization from the founding of the Italian city of Rome in the 8th century BC to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. It encompasses the Roman Kingdom 753 to 509 BC and Roman Republic 509 to 27 BC, Roman Empire 27 BC to 395 AD, and Western Roman Empire until the fall of the Western Empire. The Romans were fond of the Greeks and their achievements in the arts. The fusion of Greek and Roman cultures can be seen in the most Roman artworks.
And here we are, the period of European history from the 5th to the late 5th century, which is the Middle Ages. In the history of Europe, the Middle Ages or medieval period lasted approximately from the late 5th to the late 15th centuries, aligning with the post-classical period of global history. Until the late 11th century, southern Italy occupied the western border of the vast Byzantine. Even after this area fell under Norman rule about 1071. Italy maintained a strong link with Byzantium through trade, and this link was expressed in the art of the period. Large illustrated Bibles, or the giant Bibles, and exalted liturgical scrolls containing texts for the celebration of Easter produced in the Benevento region of southern Italy enjoyed great popularity from the 1050 onward. Miniature illustrations in the Bibles, which relate to the contemporary monumental wall paintings produced in Rome, were strongly influenced by early Christian paintings. And here is an example of the Middle Ages art, which is the Madonna and Child by Berlinghier. Of solemnly hieratic beauty, this one is one of the only two works that be confidently assigned to Berlinghiero, the leading painter in the Tuscan city of Lucca. It follows the Byzantine type known as the Hodegetria, she who shows the way. Familiar from the icons that arrived in the Italy following the fall of Constantinople in 1204, the Madonna points to Jesus as the way to salvation. Dressed like an ancient philosopher, he holds a scroll. One scholar has noted Berlingero's work operates with nuances, the language of gestures which with their gentle flow and their subtle meaning on both human and theological levels. The Renaissance art. Renaissance, which means to be born in lexical meaning, was an important period of cultural rebirth that began in Italy in the early 1300s. Gradually spreading to other European countries, the movement inspired people to improve their culture with the classical learning and values of ancient Greece and Rome. While various developments like discovery of painting, press, and new continents were the highlights in this era, it was also a time of blossoming in literature, philosophy, and arts. An example of the Renaissance art. The School of Athens fresco in the Vatican made by Raphael between 1509 and 1511. The School of Athens is a fresco by Italian Renaissance artist Raphael. The fresco was painted between 1509 and 1511 as a part of Raphael's commission to decorate the rooms now known as in the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican. It depicts a congregation of philosophers, mathematicians, and scientists from ancient Greece, including Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, Archimedes, Heraclitus, and Zarathustra, the Iranian prophet. The Italian artists Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo are also featured in the painting, shown as Plato and Heraclitus, respectively. The School of Athens is painted by the Renaissance master Raphael Sanzio in 1483 and 1520. It was painted between 1509 and 1511 during what is known as the High Renaissance for Pope Julius II, who commissioned Raphael to paint series of frescoes in the papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican. Baroque and Rococo. Baroque and late Baroque or Rococo are loosely defined terms generally applied by common consent to European art of the period from the early 17th to mid-18th centuries. Baroque was at first an undisguised term of abuse, probably derived from the Italian word barocco, which was term used by philosophers during the Middle Ages to describe an obstacle in schematic logic. Subsequently, this became a description for any contorted idea or involuntary process of thought. Another possible source is the Portuguese word barroco, which is Spanish from barhueco, used to describe an irregular or imperfectly shaped pearl. This usage still survives in the jeweler's term baroque pearl. What is Baroque art? The extravagant, complex, or bizarre, especially in the ornamentation of relating to, or characteristic of a style in an art and architecture developed in Europe from early 17th to mid 18th, emphasizing the dramatic, often strained effect and typified by bold, curving forms, elaborate ornamentation, and overall balance of disparate parts. The Rococo art. The derivation of the word Rococo is equally uncertain, though its source is most probably to be found in the French word rocaille, used to describe shell and pebble decoration in the 16th century. In the 18th century, however, the scope of the word was increased when it came to be used to describe the mainstream of French art of the first half of the century. Neoclassical artists use it as a derogatory term, fundamentally a style of decoration. Rococo is much more a facet of late Baroque art than an autonomous style, and the relationship between the two present interesting parallels to that between the High Renaissance and the Mannerist art. What is what is Rococo in art? Rococo is nothing or pertaining to a style of painting developed simultaneously with the Rococo in architecture and decoration, characterized chiefly by smallness of scale, delicacy of color, freedom of brushwork, and the selection of playful objects as thematic material. Here is an example of the Rococo art. The Swing by John Honor Fragonard. The Swing is also known as the Happy Accidents of the Swing. The original title is the 18th century oil painting by John Honor Fragonard in the Wallace Collection in London. It is considered to be one of the masterpieces of Rococo art and Fragonard's best known work.
Mannerism art. Mannerism, Italian Mannerismo from maniera, manner or style. Artistic style that predominated in Italy from the end of the High Renaissance in the 1520s to the beginning of the Baroque style around 1590. The Mannerist style originated in Florence and Rome and spread northern in Italy and ultimately to much of the Central and Northern Europe. The term was first used around the end of the 18th century by the Italian Logico Lanzi of the defined 16th century, artists who were the followers of major Renaissance masters. Mannerism originated as a reaction of the Humanist Classicism and the idealized naturalism of high Renaissance art as practiced by Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci is the first 2 decades of the 16th century. In the portrayal of the human nude, the standards of normal complexity has been set by a norm idealized beauty of Raphael, but in the form of the artist's mannerisms of successors. Neoclassicism art. Neoclassical are movement in the style in which artists art try to emulate classical models. It's very closely related to the Neoclassicism design movement, which was popular in 17th century Europe. The characteristic of neoclassical art is that its detailed ornamentation that is often symmetrical. So neoclassicism, on the other hand, was an early 18th century British design movement that incorporated classical features into its designs. So neoclassical art has less detail than neoclassical art, but they are both characterized by symmetry and geometrical shapes. Romanticism. Romanticism art, romantic is an artistic and intellectual movement that originated in Europe towards the end of the 18th century. For most of the Western world, it was speak for the approximately 1805 to 1850. Romanticism was an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement in the Europe that aimed to break free from the strict traditions and norms of the 18th century. It originated in the late 18th century in literature and spread into art as well as music in the early 19th century. Hi, my name is Ariane G. Portillo. Impressionism. Impressionism describes a style of painting developed in France during the mid to late 19th century. Characterization of the style includes small, visible brushstroke that offer the bare impressionism of from unbleeded color and emphasize on the accurate depiction of natural. Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionism refers to a genre of painting that rejected the naturalism of Impressionism. If we were using color and form in more expensive manners, the term. Post-Impressionism was coined by British artist and Roger Fry in 1910 to describe the development of French art in Saint-Manet. The Post-Impressionism rejected Impressionism concerned with the and naturalistic rendering of light and color. Instead, the force and emphasize on more symbolic content, formal order, and structure formula, similar to the Impressionism. Neo-Impressionism. Neo-Impressionism is the name given to the post-impressionist work of George Seurat, Paul Signac, and their followers who inspired by optical theory painted, using abstract dabs of primary colors to create the effect of light.
Fauvism. Fauvism is an art movement that was established towards the beginning of 20th century, characterized by its old scholar textures, brushwork, and non-naturalistic depictions. The Fauvist style marked a seminal movement in the early 20th century. Above all, Fauvism valued individual impressions, the artist's direct experience of his subject, his emotional response to nature, and his intuition were all more important than academic theory or elevated subject matter. All elements of painting were employed in service of this goal. What does Fauvism art focus? They emphasize the impressive potential of color, employing it art- arbitrarily, not based on an object's natural appearance, typical of the neo-impressionist painter George Seurat. For example, the combination of very orange, yellow, green, and purple is almost overpowering in its violent impact. Woman with a Hat. Woman with a Hat is a painting by Henri Matisse, and oil on canvas. It depicts Matisse's wife, Emily. It was painted in 1905 and exhibited on the Salon d'Automne during the autumn of the same year, along with works by André Derain, Audrey de Volney, and several other artists known as Fauvists. Cubism. Cubism is an artistic movement created by Pablo Picasso, Georges Barbeau, which employs geometric shapes and depiction of human and other forms. Over time, the geometric touches grew intense that they sometimes overtook the represented forms, creating a more pure level of visual abstraction. Cubism was the first abstract style of modern art. A cubist painting ignores the traditions of perspective drawing and shows you many views of subject at one time. The Cubists introduced knowledge in painting. The Cubists were influenced by art of other cultures, particularly African ones. Analytical Cubism. The term analytical Cubism described the early phase of Cubism, generally considered to run from 1808 to 12. The characterized by a fragmentary appearance of multiple viewpoints and overlapping plans. Synthetic Cubism. Synthetic Cubism is a period in the Cubism art movement that lasted from 1912 until 1914. led by two famous Cubist painters, it became a popular style of artwork that includes characteristic like shapes, bright colors, and little to no depth. Futurism. Futurism is Italian Futurismo, Russian Futurism in early 20th century artistic movements created Italy that emphasize the dynamism, speed, energy, and power of the machine and vitality, change, and restlessness of modern life.